So as part of today's class, we will talk about the transaction set 835, which is for the payment and the remittance and payment. That's what we call it as. Now the document which we are looking at is the 835 document, but again this is not for the 5010. Some modifications are made in the HIPAA 5010 transaction, but this is the prior version of it. 5010, again, it's a license specific restriction which we have. So we will look through the 4010. So understanding the implementation guide is moreover same. Now talking about the 835, first we need to understand what is the source of this 835 and how the data transmission happens. If you refer back to the overview of EDI, you will see the 835 transaction is the transaction which gets generated after the claim is processed. So you will not have the 835 file in place if you don't have the claims in place. And this is something which gets sent out to the provider who have signed up for this. Signed up means who have accepted the contract with the payer that they are going to receive the 835. And that's how the system, the EDI application, is going to generate the 835 to provide all the payment information, to provide how the payment is reduced, the payment is denied, or the payment is made for the claims which was submitted by the provider. So per provider, you are going to have a specific 835. Now again, you could have multiple claim information under the multiple claim payment information under the single 835 file. And again, this is the flat file format, and the format is going to be pipe delimited or fixed length delimited. That's the same format what any EDI transaction have. Now let's look at it.
Sorry to interrupt. I can't see your screen, Shutnila.
Hold on.
I sent you a message 2-3 times hoping not to interrupt, but
I haven't shared anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is the document which I am referring as the 835 implementation guide. And again, as I said, that this is the 4010 form of the document. This is the previous version, what we are using it right now. So this is one version older to what we have in place right now. But again, there are some changes. It's not like that the 5010 implementation guide for 835 is complete rewrite of this document. No, that's not the case. That is just update to this document. That's what it is. Now, let's talk about this document. Number one, again, trading partner agreement. What is your trading partner agreement? Trading partner agreement is the agreement for any 800 transaction. The reason why I use the term 800 transaction because most of the transactions are starting with 800 series in the healthcare. So all the EDI transactions in healthcare, the trading partner agreement is very much important to say that, okay, you agree to the terms and conditions, and both the parties has to come to an agreement that both agree to the terms and conditions for the transactions that what they are going to establish. For the 835, again, before the 835 can be generated, there has to be a claim in place for which the payer can create the 835 by providing all the payment information. And when we say the payment information means the claim is paid, the claim is denied, the payment is reduced. Everything comes under that. And that is what the information 835 is going to carry. Now, I will come to, there are some codes which are very specific to HIPAA, which needs to be used when the 835 is getting generated. And those codes are called as CARC code, which is Claim Adjustment Reason code, RARC code, which is your remark codes. I will walk you through where exactly you need to look for the CARC codes and the remark codes, and that is publicly available. You can Google it, you can research it, and take it forward to the next level of the analysis. First, let's understand this. Now, talking about this particular document, again, if you see here, the transaction set. The transaction set is again similar to what we have discussed as part of the 837 document, where you have the header, then under the BPR, what we see over here, you are going to have the financial information. Then under the TRN, you are having the re-association trace number. So again, all these pieces of information, what we are seeing over here is going to be same and exactly in the same manner what we have seen it as part of the 837. Being said that, so when you are reading through this document, the conceptually your understanding has to be exactly same what when you are reviewing the document. There is no difference whether you are reading the 837 implementation guide or whether you are reviewing the 835 implementation guide or whether you are reviewing any other healthcare transaction implementation guide. Your understanding has to be same. Now, let's look at it. Some of the areas which are kind of important areas which you need to understand. See, being an EDI analyst, you may be asked to see whether the right piece of information is passed under the right segment or not. Because sometimes what happens, you need to understand, being an analyst, you need to be able to control the information and have an understanding that if, let's say, there is a call from provider and the provider is complaining about the 835 that what information he has received in the 835 is not appropriate or it's incorrect or it's invalid. And now that needs to be investigated. That needs to be analyzed. How you are going to do that? So what you need to do is first, I'm just exploring through here if anything needs to be, okay. Now see here. First thing we need to understand is that how this works. As you see, here is your pair. Okay, what it is moreover trying to showcase is how the pair is sending the information to the provider. Now your provider could be an actual provider who rendered the services, or your provider could be the billing office. So moreover, who is the payee, how the transaction set work with the payee. Now, here is your pair. And the payer has to provide the payment information that is also called the electronic remittance advice, which is your electronic payment information to the payee who is supposed to receive the payment. Now, as part of the ERA, which is electronic remittance advice, what happens, that's what we need to understand. So here we have the EFT, ERA and funds. So these are the methods how the payment can be done. EFT is electronic fund transfer. ERA is simple, your remittance advice. And the funds are the how much is the money, whether you are going to send a check or how that is going to. So when the payer is sending out the information, all this information needs to be available. Once that is done, once that information is captured, then at the same time, the payer DFI is what? See here, depository financial institution. So if this financial institution is who? The bank who controls the money. See, payer is not actually sitting on top of the money. Payer have a bank account where all the money is available, all the financials are kept. Someone is just managing it from the payer side. Being said that, once the payer provides that information that okay, who needs to receive the payment, what will, whether it has to be EFT, whether it has to be through check, and how all that information, the debit department gets notified about that information and that gets updated to the payer as well. Whereas it's a both-way transaction. So what happens, all these pieces of information will be sent by the financial institution, which is the bank, payer bank, to the payee. And then the payee side, you will see the payee side will have that amount access. and then the payee is going to have that bank where that amount will be debited. So it's not like two parties are talking. There are another two entities, which is your bank, who will do the transaction and then notify the payer as well as the payee. And once the overall transaction is done, then you see that information EFT, ERA and the fund details will be notified to the payee that the fund is available in the account. On the other hand side, that debit department will provide the notification to the payer that the amount is debited from the account. So this is the overall architecture how the 835 transaction works. And this is no different than a regular transaction that let's assume that you are trying to make payment for the credit card. It's moreover the same that your bank from where you owe the credit card is going to notify the purchaser, and then the purchaser bank when receives that payment, it will reflect in their account. So moreover the concept is same, but the only thing is the name of the transaction is given little differently over here. Now once that is done, let's move on to some of the information which are the key to understand. Now see here, 835 contains information about the payee, the payer, the amount and any identifying information of the payment. For example, where the payment needs to go, what will be the transaction ID for that, who is authorizing the payment, what bank is going to take that transaction. All these piece of information is, that is why this is called as payment and remittance advice. Once that all that information is captured, then let's see what happens next. So this is just explaining that how the payer to payee it works. Now this is, we just talked about it, this is just an example given over here. Now this is showcasing the how the EFT transaction will work. Just an example, random. Payer sends some dollar via EFT instruction to the payer DFI, which is the fund financial institution. Payer sends ERA directly to payee. Payer DFI sends dollar to the payee DFI, so bank to bank transfer. Payer DFI notifies payee of the amount, then the payee reconciles the ERA with the dollar. Reconciliation means that okay, what the claim was submitted for, what payment they are getting it back, or whether there is a rejection, whatever it is. The reconciliation has to happen what they submitted versus for which they have received the update. Then ERA and the payment delivered separately. There are multiple case examples given, which is a very good thing for you to understand how the electronic world work. ACH is the electronic transfer, which happens automated clearinghouse. That's what it is. Clearinghouse is nothing but a financial institution who work as a middle layer between two bodies, which is the payer and the payee. Then you have the remittance. Now see here that how the remittance works, that this is how the transaction header, then you have the physical year, that for which year the claims are. If their claim goes across multiple years, that is how you will see. If not, it will be just the year and the list of claims which is going to get part of it. Now see here, this is no different than what we saw as part of the 837. Again, you have a concept of loop, repeat, usage, loop, repeat, data segments. It is exactly the same. And then you have the trailer, which is over here. Once anyone understands how to read the implementation guide, I think you know EDI very well, because everything whatever is implemented as part of the EDI is as an outcome of your implementation guide and the companion guide combination. I'm looking for, okay, here is something you need to understand. Procedure code bundling and unbundling. This is a very big key concept in the claims world, and the claim itself is treated as another subdomain in the healthcare industry. Reason being is there are many ifs and buts, many rules and regulations which play a very crucial role when it comes down to the claim processing. Now first let's understand what is bundling and what is unbundling. Bundling means when you have multiple procedure codes but you are combining them to make the payment. Whereas unbundling means you have some procedure codes which you are splitting it to make the payment. Now let's say the provider submitted 3 codes but you are bundling it together and making payment under one procedure code. So the payment is inclusive and bundled procedure. Whereas unbundling means the provider, so in the bundling what happens, 3 procedure code got submitted and the payment is being done all cumulative together, then that is a bundling procedure, bundled claim. So in that case the claim system is going to insert additional lines and make the payment. Whereas when it comes down to unbundling, now you have the procedure code and what you are doing is you are reducing it. Rather than adding it, you are just rejecting the procedure code and then ungrouping them and then making the specific payment for those procedure codes. So that is your unbundling. So now let's read this what it says. Procedure code bundling or unbundling occurs when a payer believes that the actual services performed and the reported for the claim payment can be represented by a different group of procedure codes. So that means they are making some changes to the claim so that they can make the payment accurately for that particular claim. So they are making some changes. Now bundling occurs when 2 or more reported procedures are going to be paid under only one procedure code. Whereas your unbundling occurs when one submitted procedure code is to be paid and reported back as 2 or more procedure codes. So you see that the concept. So what happens when this bundled and the unbundled procedure is not going to be reported back to the payee who is the submitter of the claim, they cannot reconcile the claim. Because if you submitted 3 lines and you are getting back only 1 line, your claim is not going to balance. Your claim is not going to compare A to A. Similarly, when you submitted 3 and when you submitted 1 and you are getting back 3, then also your claim is not going to balance because you are looking for the claim where you submitted only 1 line, but when you have the returned claim, you are seeing 3 lines. So that is the bundling and the unbundling procedure. But the 835, when it gets generated, it has to report that so that the reconciliation can be done. So what it says, when the bundling or the unbundling occurs, the information must be reported back to the payee accurately to facilitate automatic entry into the patient accounting or the accounts receivable system, so that the payee, so that the receiver side, they can just control and balance it. Now some loop and the cash segment information given over there, which you can read it. So that is the use of bundling and unbundling. Now there is an example given over here. So see, before we see the example, this is exactly how your data is going to look like. Here the data is separated by star. So this is exactly how the raw data of 835 is going to look like. Now the example is given over here for the bundling. Now it says, example of a PPO, which is the preferred provider organization. This example leaves out the date and other segments not necessary to bundling. The provider submits procedure code A and B for $100 each to his or her PPO as a primary coverage. The procedure was performed on the same date of service. Okay, so there are 2 lines, 2 procedure code, $100 each. The PPO claim gets adjudicated and the system screen and the submitted procedure and notes that the procedure C covers the services rendered by the provider on that single date of service. So what happens? The provider is not covered for A and B, but he is covered for C, which can be paid for the service which is provided on the same date of service, which is not, it's not like that he treated for the migraine and he is getting paid for the diabetic treatment. No, that is the similar, same type of procedure code, but more appropriate procedure code. So in this case, what happens? Let's say for the C, the provider is only applicable for $120 contractual price. Means the contract says, the PPO contract says that the provider is, if the provider provides the service C, he will only be paid $120 no matter how much he have paid, how much he have billed. Sorry about that. So in that case, what happens? The system will pick up the procedure C with the amount of $100, $120 of contract price, whereas there is a co-insurance of $20. The patient has not met that deductible of $50. So now what is happening is, in the CLP segment, which is the CLP, we can see all the way up. What is that CLP segment? We'll look at it. First, we'll go back to CLP to find out what it is. The CLP says for the claim ID, 200 was the bill charges, whereas it is provided, see, this data needs to be translated. Okay, I just don't want to translate it wrong, but what I am trying to explain over here is, you see there, this cash segment is the one where moreover you are going to find what is your co-payment, what is your deductible, and all those values. This is the area where you are going to moreover see. So this 20 is coming as the co-insurance, whereas we need to see where this deductible goes and where exactly this 120 goes. So the more appropriate bundled procedure which is going to be paid for this particular claim is $120, where it will break down of $50 deductible and the $20 of co-insurance. So what system will do is, the system will deduct 70 out of 120. That means the system is going to make the payment of $50, and whereas the 70 will become member's responsibility. That's how this claim is going to get paid. So how the claim will look like? The claim which was submitted will have line A and procedure A and procedure B, and the charges were $100, $100. Whereas when the claim will go back to the physician, to the pay, it will have 3 lines, where line A, line B will be in a denied status, and line 3, which is a new line which is added by the claim system, will have the same 200 charges. It will combine the total charge of line A and B, where the contract amount will say $120, and then the deductible will say $50, co-insurance will say $20. So the total altogether member responsibility will have $70, and the $50 would be your check amount which your insurance is going to pay. And that is how you balance out the claim. So this is the bundle and the unbundled concept that needs to be reported. Again, the example is given for the unbundling as well. Okay, now here is something which we need to understand, which is the claim adjustment reason code. Now, to see that, you need to understand this claim adjustment reason code. As it says, you need to understand that every time there is the HIPAA mandate says, every time there is a reduction or denial of the payment, you must, or any modification in the claim, what was being submitted, you must provide a reason of why. Why meaning why the claim was, why the payment was reduced. Why means why the claim was rejected. Why means why the procedure was bundled or unbundled, or the claim payment was done under some another procedure code, something like that. So they must provide the reason. Now, what is the reason? Is Aetna is going to have its own reason? Is Cigna going to have its own reason? The answer to that question is yes as well as no. The reason why I said yes, they all will have their own reason means when they generate the paper version of the payment remittance, they can use their own proprietary message, which can be very specific. The verbiage of that message can be very specific to each payer. So Cigna can have its own message, Aetna can have its own message. Whereas when it comes down to generating the 835, they have to pick the standard message which is provided by the Washington publication, which is WPC. Let's go and see. When you go there, you see the first thing will come on the WPCEDI.com, which is, and this is the claim adjustment reason code. You see, this claim adjustment reason code, for what number you see, this is the number, this is the message code. This is not just a generic number. This is the message code which needs to be in place. Depending upon the condition, they must send out the message code on the, they don't need to send out these transitions, the translation of each message code. They just need to, in a particular loop and segment. See, for example, it says loop 2110 service payment information and REF, if present, the message needs to go out. Refer to the 835 healthcare policy identification segment. So this is the segment where the message needs to be provided as per the need of the claim. So what it says, every time you need to use a message code, you must use a message code as part of the CARC code, claim adjustment reason code. Now, as you see, if it has to do with the deductible, the message code 1. If it has to do with the coinsurance, you say message 2. If there is a member liability for any of these 3 reasons, you need to say whether 1, 2, 3, something like that. You need to provide that. Not only that, once this message is being provided, there are some messages which requires additional information. For example, let's refer to, for example, before I go over there, if the claim is a duplicate claim, for example, you need to specify message code 18, which says it's a exact duplicate. Now this 18 can be used if the line is a duplicate of another line, you can use a message code of 18. If the line is if the claim itself is a duplicate of one of the history claim, you can use 18. So there are multiple situations where this 18 can be used on the 835. Not only that, number 16, you see claims / service. So that means claim means the overall claim. That means you are rejecting the full claim because of message code 16. Or if you are saying service, that means you are rejecting a line with the help of this 16 reason. So that means there is something missing on the line, not on the full claim. So it says claim / service lack information or has submission or billing error which is needed for the adjudication. Do not use this code for the claim attachment other documentation. For example, you cannot use this code 16 and reject the claim or the line if you are requiring, let's say it's a COB claim, which is coordination of benefit claim, and you need the another carrier explanation of benefit. For that you need to send out a letter. You cannot use this message code for requesting the coordination of benefit, explanation of benefit. You can't use it. On top of that, it says at least one remark code must be provided. That means there is additional information you need to provide, and I'll show you how to look up for the remark code. It says if you are using the message code 16, you must provide one remark code as well, which will provide additional information that, okay, what kind of a missing information. Let's go here. Just look for remark code. See, WPC again, you got the remittance advice remark code. That's why RARC and the CARC. RARC is the subset, which means that you have to have the CARC before. You cannot simply just use RARC. You have to have a CARC, and there are some CARC codes which requires remark codes like 16. Similarly, you have 96 also, which is very generic. 96 is your non-covered charges. See, for non-covered charges also it says at least one remark code must be provided. If your 835 transaction doesn't follow these guidelines, that means you are out of compliance and the payer can get into the penalty. They may end up, if they get audited and all these issues are identified, they may end up making the payment towards the penalty. Not only that, they also need to make sure that the start date and the end date. So for the claim or the claim line for which they are using these message codes, the date of service of that particular line has to follow between this. Means the code which they are using for the date of service, the message code should be effective for that date of service. If the message code is expired and still they have used it, that means they are non-compliant. So those are the regulations, those are the HIPAA mandates, that's what they need to follow. Now talking about the remittance, this is exactly the same type of a message code. You see here, these are the message codes, M1, M2, M3. But these are the remark codes which needs to go along with the reason code. So for example, we said 16 claim lacks some information, or let's say 96 non-covered services, which is the CARC code I just talked about. So let's say if the CARC, the message code on the SCAR code is 16 and the claim is missing the HIPAA or the procedure code, they can say 16 plus they need to provide, for example, missing or incomplete invalid HIPAA code. That means M20. So now the provider, now the payee knows what is wrong in that particular line, because now they provided that okay, something is missing or incorrect, and with reference to HIPAA code, which is the procedure code on the claim. Or they may say the missing or incomplete or invalid place of residence for this service item provider. So if it is a durable medical equipment claim, which is the DME claim, and they have sent out the message code, which is the CARC code as 16, along with M21, now they know that the place, there is something wrong with the place of service. If they have the M22, they may see the number of miles traveled. If it is the, let's say, ambulance claim, and the message code is 16 along with M22, that means they know something wrong with the miles which is submitted on the claim. So by looking at the combination of CARC and the RARC, it is very easy for the payee to translate what went wrong in the claim, why the payment is being reduced, or why the payment is being denied. They can easily see that. Similarly, when you have the non-covered can also easily go with any of this. For example, missing or incomplete place of residence. So let's say that place of service is not covered service for the DME claim. The claim can be rejected easily because that location was not under the benefit. That can be rejected. Similarly, you have some N codes. Let's navigate through the N code. N16 or N04. There are some codes which are very commonly used along with 96. Okay, here. Okay. Okay, see here. Let's say the claim was submitted with the modifier, and the modifier is the professional modifier as well as the technical modifier. Both the modifiers are on the claim. As I explained earlier, the modifier is the information which is the additional piece of information which is not necessarily will be available on every claim. But there are some claims where the modifier needs to be submitted. For example, let's say X-ray. X-ray has to have the technical component as well as the professional component. Means it has to have an information, it has to have the modifier tied to it, so that the insurance company can understand whether this claim or the line is for the professional service, means that person who is going to read through the notes, or for the person who actually operated the machine. That a person who operated the machine is the technical component, and the person who translated the report is the professional component. Both needs to get differently. Both needs to get paid differently. Being said that, the insurance company needs to receive the modifier. So now let's say based on the modifier the payment is made and some CARC code is provided. On top of that, or the payment is reduced. So you could have some CARC code along with N13 which says payment based on professional or the technical component modifiers. So that means they know that the payment is reduced or payment is done based on the consideration that the modifier was submitted, and if there was the professional modifier, they will know, the payer side, the billing office would know the payment is for the professional modifier, but if the claim was along with the technical modifier, the payment is for the technical modifier. And that's how they decide, that's how they know what kind of an information is going to be available as part of it. And this is all of your 835 transaction set. If there is more information needed, then you can watch the video again where I have the coding overview chapter which explains what are the different type of codes there, what exactly is modifier, and you can understand it. But if there are additional questions you have, we can take it forward in the class. And that is all about your 835. Claim is, let's say there is an issue with the claim on the HMO claim, and the provider complained that okay, the payment is reduced, but I don't see any description given, any message given. Then your starting point should be, what happens when this type of claims are going out? Is there any adjustment reason code or the remark codes are being sent or not? If you see one or two claims, that means there are multiple instances when the CARC or the RARC code is not being sent out. All these codes are mapped on the EDI side, so that anytime the 835 is getting generated, automatically these messages get assigned depending upon the condition. So now first you need to identify the exact condition when these messages are going as blank and it's not getting assigned. Once you identify that, you need to be very specific about the message. That means it shouldn't be the case that if the adjustment reason code is not being sent out for the duplicate claims, then you need to go and find out the exact message which is more appropriate for only for the duplicate claim condition. Or there could be the situation where the payment is rejected whereas it says payment is reduced. That is also discrepancy, because you are rejecting the payment whereas you are saying that the payment is reduced, and the provider is saying you have not made any payment and you are telling me that you have reduced the payment.
Right.
So that crosswalk message is very important. So you may have to go back and see what kind of a crosswalk is done. And what is the crosswalk? Crosswalk means one side you have all the proprietary messages which is very specific to the payer, and the payer have created maybe 200 or 300 of the message codes that okay, if the claim is rejected from X123 which says the claim line is a duplicate, it has to crosswalk to CARC 18 which is the duplicate claim. If the claim says the benefit not covered and the message code which is for the proprietary message is A123, that is the proprietary message code A123, it has to crosswalk to 96 which is the CARC code. That means if on the claim system, claim processing system, claim is rejected using this proprietary EOB message. When the 835 being generated for this claim, it has to translate to 96. You need to check that crosswalk table, and you need to, for the reasons where the CARC code is not being sent out to provider, you need to find out the bunch of claims for that reason, and then see what are the message codes, what are the proprietary message codes the claim is reducing the payment or rejecting the payment, and then create a new crosswalk for those messages based on the recommendation from the claim team that what message is more appropriate to send out on the 835 side.
Wow. Okay.
And that kind of a analysis the analyst has to do and complete that analysis.
Okay.
So this is all about your 835 transaction